couple more minutes to come into the webinar, and then I'll get started. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar. This is Career Services with Cares and CAPS series. So today is mostly gonna be CAPS and Cares that will be in the presentation, and then next week on the 7th will be Career Services. So from CAPS, we have myself, which is Tien Nguyen, and Heidi Bosasto. We're gonna be presenting on CAPS, and we're gonna be talking a lot about how to deal with a lot of uncertainty, anxiety, sadness, fear, anger that might have been coming up due to COVID-19 pandemic. And our goal is to help you develop an understanding of grief and how to understand emotion regulation, learning stress management. We'll be talking about some coping strategy, and then learning about what CAPS have to offer for you, and also what it's there what's out in the community that is available for you. And then after CAPS, a representative from CARES Services will be doing their presentation. So let's get started. So right now, I wanted to talk a little bit about grief, because we all are going through a little bit of grieving due to COVID-19. And a lot of time when we think about grief, we think about losing a loved one, but grief comes in different forms as well. So it's also including like grieving the loss of routines, of your social connection, family structure, sense of security, changes in school, jobs, and health. So when the school went from allowing students to be on campus to going remotely 100%, there was a lot of grieving in being able to go to classes and having to deal with learning how to do your classes online. So that could be a part of grief as well. And grief can show in different ways. It can show physically, cognitively, emotionally, and behaviorally. So in emotional, it's present as someone may be feeling more irritable, feeling more sad. There's mood swings, maybe fear and anxiety that's involved. With physical, it may be you notice a change in appetite, feeling more tired at home. Cognitively, maybe you're having trouble making decisions, and your concentration is not as how it used to be. You're having difficulty concentrating on work or school. And then maybe you find yourself having memory problems, such as like forgetting small things. Like if you usually remember to do your assignments and you're always on time, but then now you're starting to realize you are behind on task because you're forgetting that things are coming up and things are due. So that's normal. It's a normal part of grief. For behavior, there's also maybe you're feeling restless where you're unable to rest, social withdrawal, change in certain activity you typically do, also increased use in alcohol and drugs. So some of the stages of grief that we might have gone through, and we all go through these stages differently and at a different pace. So it starts with denial. So in a way, denial is the virus won't affect us, the virus won't affect me or my family. And then feeling anger when the government placed the stay-at-home placement, and you're thinking, making me stay at home, taking away my activity, my routine, I can't see my friends. And then bargaining is looks like, oh, if I social distance for 2 weeks, it'll be okay. Or just saying like, okay, this is just a month, once it's done, and then I'll be okay. And then feeling sadness is not being unsure of when this will end and what to expect from this. And finally, acceptance is you are accepting that this is happening and then figuring out how to cope with it. So an example I gave is like you learn how to proceed with it by washing your hand, keeping a safe distance from others, learning how to learn virtually, or even if you work from home now instead of going to your job, learning how to work from home. And then listening to authorities' instructions, such as the governor or the mayor, of rules that change throughout the community. So some additional sign of grief can include panic, feeling overwhelmed or incapacitated by fear and grief, and then emotional numbness. So there's a couple ways that you can cope with grief by doing what is right for you, being able to go at your own pace, and everyone, is different. So what might be right for you might not be right for another person. Seeking out support from people in your life, so that can include friends, partner, family, classmate, professor, and counselors, advisor, anyone that you find that you can talk to and can support you. Being able to find ways to express yourself and how to release your emotions, either by talking, by journaling, even crying, or doing arts activities, doing something creative to be able to provide that expressive outlet. Stay with a routine, sticking to a schedule. If you find yourself not having a routine, maybe creating something that you can go by day to day. It doesn't have to be keeping every minute on tab. It's just saying, okay, what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna eat breakfast, I'm gonna focus on reading, then I give myself this time to do whatever I want, and then lunch. So it can be whatever you like. And even if you feel like that routine is hard to stick to, just try to go through with the motion. It helps when you have something, and it helps you pass your time during the day even quicker. Being able to recognize the feelings of what they are rather than why they are. So knowing what your feeling is can help you deal with this. So for example, if you're feeling sad, think about, okay, I'm feeling sad right now. Why am I feeling sad? I'm feeling sad because I can't see my friends. So what can I do? Maybe I'll call my friend and maybe we can FaceTime, and that way I can feel a little bit better. Being able to forgive yourself and being patient with yourself. This is uncharted territory for what a lot of us going through. We've never been through a pandemic before. So we are all learning on how to cope with this. And it's okay if you make mistakes, or you can't focus, or you're having trouble figuring out what you need to do. It's okay to have those thoughts and feelings. So just being able to be patient with yourself is what will help you through this.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about emotional regulation. And so I want to first talk about what our brain does in a response to a threat or a perceived threat. It's an automatic response, and that's the fight, flight, or freeze. And so all of us have definitely experienced a threat or perceived threat at this time of the pandemic, whether it's in response to the pandemic itself, whether it's in response to the way classes have changed and learning has changed, or whether it's in response to losing a job or some of the other things that Tien already discussed. We may have had this automatic response in our brain. And so emotional regulation is being able to pause between that automatic response, pause between what we feel, and then to be able to choose what we're going to do in response to that. So to choose how we act, to choose what patterns of behavior we use or we form using rational thinking and reasoning. And so it's necessary for us to first assess our emotional triggers. And there are times in life where we do have to respond by fight, flight, or freeze. And there are times where that response doesn't serve us. So right now we might feel like we need to fight against all the regulations against us, or we might feel we need to flee it, to run away, to close ourselves in our house and not leave at all. Or some people may be feeling frozen and not know what to do and feel themselves unproductive with school or work or whatever else they may be facing. And so it's knowing that those can be normal responses, but then assessing the trigger and deciding if those responses are actually going to be helpful right now. And the reality is that those responses probably are not going to work in our favor. So we have to filter the most important pieces of information and attend to it in a way that's not going to evoke stress and fear and maintain that automatic brain response. So some skills to develop or to increase our emotional regulation are going to be self-awareness. And so in this context, it's noticing what we feel and naming the feeling. And then hand in hand with that is accepting vulnerability. So the accepting vulnerability is really accepting the fact that we're human beings and it can't all be positive all the time. We're not always great. We're not always good. Everything's not always wonderful. It's okay to be excited and happy and feel like things are wonderful when they are, but it's also okay to feel sad or scared or angry, and to really allow ourselves to be in that vulnerable place. And then it's cognitive reappraisal. So what that is thought replacement. So it's looking for alternative perspectives. It's seeing what may be negative, but then also looking for what are some other ways to look at the situation. So we're not looking at suppressing or eliminating the uncomfortable emotion we're feeling. We're looking for better ways to deal with the emotion. And so part of that comes with attention control. It's choosing what we pay attention to and then looking at it from a rewarding perspective. And again, this doesn't mean minimizing the distress or discomfort we're feeling, but it is saying, my life has changed greatly. I have to stay at home, but what can I take from this that is rewarding? Maybe it's that I am getting 3 or 4 weeks to 1 tank of gas and I'm not paying for all the tolls. So again, finding the things within the situation that could also be rewarding. And then having adaptability. So knowing what is and what isn't in our control and letting go of the things that are not under our control to allow us to move with it. Since the reality is we don't really have a choice in this. We just end up prolonging getting to a productive place if we resist and are not adaptable. So let's talk about stress. We talked about regulating our emotion, but now I want to talk a little bit about stress. And stress is something that we are all familiar with. We've all experienced. And so stress is the perception that demands placed on us exceed our ability to cope. So in our present circumstances, it's the perception that the pandemic and all of the ways it's altered our lives exceed our ability to cope. It often comes from adverse or very demanding circumstances, or from places where we feel little or no control. So part of understanding stress is knowing that extreme or long-term stress can have a huge negative impact on us. So in physical ways, it can impact us with health conditions and lower our immune system, which right now we want to be working at its best. In mental health ways, it can turn into anxiety and other mental health issues. So we want to manage our stress effectively so that we can create or maintain a sense of peacefulness, calmness, relaxation, and comfort. So let's talk about how we set ourselves up for success when we're experiencing stress. Because as we talked about in the slide before, we are under stress right now, and the stress is not necessarily under our control. What we do about it is under our control, but the circumstances we're experiencing are not. So we need to have realistic expectations. We can't have that expectation that 2 weeks from now, everything will be back to normal. There are going to be adjustments that will be in place for a while, and some that may start to get back to normal. But having realistic expectations about what things can look like right now, knowing ourselves, what works for each person is unique to them. So your ways of coping and dealing with the situation might look different than the person next to you or someone else in your home, a friend that you're in contact with. And that is okay. It has to be what works for you and not what works for someone else. Planning ahead and preparing whenever we can to reduce the impact of the stressor. And so it might be looking at maybe challenges you faced with the classes all going to remote learning last semester. So now it would be planning ahead for how you're going to tackle this semester, or how you're going to tackle another area of your life or address your stressors in other areas. Be flexible, be willing to roll with some things. Some things we have to just roll with, and we have to take them as they come and figure out how to cope. And some things can be in our control, but the things that are not, we have to learn how to be flexible in order to reduce our stress. Remembering to care for our whole self, all the different parts, whether it's physical, emotional, creative, intellectual, and so on. Caring for all of those parts of yourself in order to have a whole sense of wellness. And then create habits, structure, and a schedule for self-care and wellness. Healthy coping isn't a one-time event. It's more like maintaining a car or preparing to compete in an athletic event. It takes time, practice, and repetition. We have to build it into our daily lives. And then we also will need to know how to deal with adversity. We can set ourselves up for success, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to go our way, but it's giving ourselves the opportunity for as much to go our way as possible, and then knowing how to deal with the things that are not going our way, that are going to come along anyway. An important component of that is giving ourselves permission to feel. Sometimes we don't want to be in touch with those emotions that we consider to be negative, or I'm going to call uncomfortable. The reality is those are a normal, natural, healthy part of our response to life, just like the more positive and comfortable emotions are. We just don't want to camp out there. We want to give ourselves permission to feel it until we don't have a need to feel it, and then we can move forward. Learn healthy coping skills. So Tiana is going to talk more about coping in a few minutes, but I wanted to just mention that healthy coping skills would be things that add something positive to your life without adding risk. Taking responsibility for ourselves, responsibility for our reactions to things, for what we're doing to care for ourselves, what we are taking control of that is within our control. Practicing healthy and open communication. Others around us don't know what we feel unless we tell them. They can't respond to our needs and be there for us and support us unless we tell them. And that goes for friends, family, professors, counselors, career services, whoever you're working with. It's communicating what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, having open communication so that they can best step in to meet the need. Setting boundaries, and this means in all ways. So setting boundaries with people around us, setting boundaries with our time, and setting boundaries with the tasks that we commit to as well. Again, taking control of things that are within our control, and using the snowball effect, which means to tackle the smallest task or problem first so that we can build confidence and motivation for ourselves. Then we go to the next smallest until we build up to the biggest. If we try to tackle the biggest problem first, sometimes it can knock us down to where we lose complete motivation. So we want to start with what we can be successful with easily and then build on that. And then categories of coping. Again, Tien is going to go more into detail with everyone about specific coping skills that could be helpful in the times that we're dealing with right now. But it's really looking at what are different ways to cope. And so here are the different categories of coping. And so it doesn't mean you have to engage in each and every single one, but it is knowing that if some types of coping skills are not feeling helpful to you in the moment, try something in a different category. Try something that will provide a different sense of relief. So diversions are things that take our mind off of the problem. So that could be anything that could distract us, from grounding skills to watching TV to reading a book. And so distracting is appropriate at times. Community care, continuing, even though we're in remote circumstances, continuing to connect with people that are important to you. So connecting with your friends, connecting with your family, connecting with people who
Heidi, I think I seem to lost you. So please let me know if I need to move on to the next one.
So I believe we're frozen at the moment.
Oh,
Lord.
Heidi, are you here? Let's see.
Sorry, y'all. I think we are having some technical difficulties. Give it just a moment to get back online.
So sorry, I'm back. I just got kicked off, so I don't know what happened. I'm happy to be back. If we could go back just one slide, Tien. Right there. Okay. Going back to categories of coping, there are physical coping, and physical intention releasers can be, there's some overlap between them, but just a physical way to relieve your stress, to relieve your anxiety, to relieve the discomfort that you're feeling. Spiritual coping is connecting with something bigger than yourself. So it could be connecting with a particular religious practice, if that is your thing, connecting with nature, something bigger than yourself. So it could be a cause, nature, anything like that. And then limit setting, which goes back to what we mentioned a little bit earlier. And that's knowing what your limits are with things that you can take on, as well as being able to set limits with other people that may be demanding something more than what you feel like you're able to give. And then when to seek additional help. So when we are in the middle of pretty extreme circumstances, and I would say a pandemic qualifies as pretty extreme circumstances, it's knowing that sometimes our emotional response is going to be more significant than what typical stressors would be. So I would say, you know, if you experience any of these to a smaller degree, it may not necessarily mean anything more significant than we're just in pretty stressful times. But if this is really occupying how you're feeling, how you're interacting with others, what's going on for you, then we really want to encourage you to seek additional help. So if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, so what that means is you keep trying to do something, maybe you keep reading something, but you're not retaining it. You're not taking it in. You keep trying to get things done, but it's happening at a much slower pace than what it should with what you're doing. Feeling lazy, I don't believe in the term lazy. I don't believe that exists. My experience as a counselor is that whenever someone is acting quote unquote lazy, there is a legitimate reason behind, but it's figuring out what is that reason? What is deterring you from being able to push forward and do what you need to do? So that could be a reason to seek additional help. If you find yourself snapping at others and irritable, again, to a significant degree, losing interest in things that you love. So I think a lot of us are experiencing some challenges with our motivation or accomplishing tasks the same way that we normally would. This is more things that really recharge you and feed into you, you're not interested in anymore. If you're feeling particularly sad, empty, and hopeless, if you find yourself having panic attacks, sometimes we don't know if what we're feeling constitutes a panic attack, but if you think it may, that would be a reason to seek additional help. Or if you really feel consumed by your anxiety or worry and it's all that you can focus on, please reach out for help.
All right, so I will be going over a couple coping strategies that you can use at home or anywhere to help you cope with anxiety and what feeling of sadness and what Heidi has spoken about previously. So some of the coping strategy could include breathing techniques, and I'm gonna go over the breathing square that I have there in a second. You can do yoga and stretches, or even taking a walk, leaving your house and just taking a quick walk down the street, or even going to the backyard and change the environment. Talking to a support system, like we said before, it's helpful to have someone to talk to so that you can express what's going on and how you're feeling. And if also you can read a book or watch movies. I have a list of 50 ways where you can use coping strategy, and I will bring that up in a little bit. So these are just a few, including cooking and baking. If you like to cook, or if there's something that you want to make or you want to try a new recipe, I would say go for it. Try cooking and baking. Writing, creating, so writing in a journal, making something. If you like art or if you like music, use that to express yourself. And I want to take a moment and teach you how to do a breathing technique. So this is I call it a 4 square breathing technique. So you'll breathe in for 4 seconds, and then you'll hold it, and then you'll breathe out for 4 seconds. So you would do this 4 times, and it'll take less than 30 seconds to go through it. And you can use this, anytime throughout the day. If you're feeling overwhelmed and you just want to take a quick moment to calm yourself, so that could be like during a test or just in random moments, like in the car or at your house. It's a quick 30-second breathing technique. So I want to start by, I'm gonna count, and then so let's try inhaling. So you want to inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now exhale for 4 seconds. So breathe everything out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now just rest for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now do it again. Inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to try to do it 2 more times. So inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. And just rest. 2, 3, 4. Last time. 2, 3, 4. You hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Now exhale. 2, 3, 4. And take a rest. 2, 3, 4. So I hope this has helped you, and possibly you can use it at any time when you're feeling overwhelmed. It just kind of helps you gather your thought for a second. So like I said earlier, you can use this at any time, any place, and just takes only a couple seconds to do. So I want to take a moment and talk about mindfulness. So mindfulness is a lot has to do with being fully present and aware of your current moment, where you are there, what you're currently doing. It's about not being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around you. So it's just being in that moment, being aware of what's going on and as it is happening. So a lot of time we had a lot on our mind. So when we're walking to class, for example, you're probably thinking about 1,000 things that are going on, like when's my next test, when is this due, I need to call a person, I need to do this. So being mindfulness is not about getting rid of all those thoughts, but it's just focusing on what you're currently doing at that moment. And that moment could be saying, okay, I'm breathing and I'm going to class and I'm focusing on going to class. So you purposefully directing your attention to what is happening in the present moment. And that can help a lot with being in the moment and feeling okay, and just focusing on that instead of what to expect next or what's gonna happen next. So and then a way you can practice mindfulness also is meditation or breathing, and doing yogas or doing some type of activity for that you can slow down your breathing and take your time. So here is something that I said that I would bring up. So there's 50 ways to take a break. So if you would want to do whatever you want, there's different ways you can take a break. I would say take a screenshot of this and put it on your phone, put it somewhere where if you're feeling overwhelmed and you just need a moment, these are things that you can refer to do. So you can go outside and sit with nature, you can let out a sigh, you can read a book, learn something new, notice what your body is feeling, go for a run, sometimes even turning off all of our electronics and just being by ourselves in a room or doing something that not relating to the electronic might help as well. So these are some things that I think would definitely help with dealing with being in the moment. So a little bit about CAPS. We are located near the Health Center in Building 27. So these are our contact information, our website, and our phone number. So right now for summer, we're open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are not seeing in-person, we are not providing in-person services, but we are currently providing telemental health services. So if you give us a call, we'll walk you through the instruction. If you're not our current client, we'll walk you through the instruction of how to become a client. And if you are a current client, then you can call the front desk and they will walk you through what needs to be done to pursue telemental health services. If you ever feel like you're in a crisis, we have crisis hotline on campus. So if whenever CAP's not open, we have the crisis hotline where you can call our phone number and you can hit the extension 5 to talk to a live clinician. You can use it any time of the day, 2 a.m. So it's once CAP is closed, this line is open to all UCF students. And these are some other ways you can connect with CAPS through social media. We have Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram and YouTube. And we currently have a lot of resources on there of how to deal with certain things and different topics that might be helpful for you. So I would encourage you to try to take a look at our social media. And these are some resources that are out at UCF or even in the community. So with TAO, we have TAO Self Health, that's part of CAPS, and it's a self-guided, and you just need a UCF ID email, and you just sign up to the website and it guides you through a lot about how to deal with depression, anxiety, and what those are about, and signs to look out for, and ways to cope with it. So I find that very helpful for students that just want to read up on information. We have the UCF CRC Center, which is for any student that are going through recovery. You can go on their website and find more information on what they offer and their contact information. I know that they are having some online meetings that for AAs, so you can call them and get more information about that. Also, UCF Victim Services, if you need their assistant, their website, and their phone number. And then, of course, the Student Health Services. In the community, there is the Central Florida Crisis Hotline. So if at any time you feel like you need to talk to a counselor or a professional, you can call that number, the National Hope Line. And then the Central Florida has their own victim services, and this is their phone number. And they also provide free counseling through telehealth for the pandemic. They also have a text line, so you can use that. There's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can go on there and you can chat with them if you don't feel like calling. And then the next, loveisrespect.org and crisistextline.org is, you can text them. So if you don't feel like calling anyone, you don't feel like talking to anyone, you just want to text somebody, you can have the option to do that too. So I think, if you feel the need to talk to someone, there are resources out there, and I encourage you to contact these resources. Even if you don't feel like talking to CAPS and you want to talk to somebody, please reach out. And next will be UCF Cares.
All right. So hi, y'all. My name is Gabby Dixon. I work with Student Care Services, and I specifically work with the UCF Cares initiative. So you may have seen us around campus previously, and we are still doing things online. So as we get started, let's just take a deep breath first, because I know we've been talking a lot about some heavy stuff, and we're going to continue doing that. So we're just going to take a breath in for a second and release. Okay, so it's important, as they've been talking about, to acknowledge how you're doing during this time and be able to work through that. And so with UCF Cares, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how some of the other areas that could be impacting you right now, and some additional ways that we can assist. So like I said, this can be affecting you in multiple areas, and we're going to get a little bit into that. But it's important to take note that this is impacting, has the ability to impact you in different ways, and being important to be able to find those resources and use those resources when appropriate. And they may not all be things that you need right now, but kind of tuck them away in your back pocket as things that you might be able to use in the future, and use them in different order based off of your need. Know that things are coming up unexpectedly. This is not something that we had ever thought was going to happen. And so really just like we just took that deep breath, continuing to do that as we move forward. And knowing that how this is impacting you is going to look different for each other person around you. So being mindful of that, allowing yourself the space to feel how you're feeling and deal with that according to what you need at that time. Address concerns step by step as they come up. And try to plan ahead as you can. When you know something is coming, like a rent check or different things, be able to plan that out as best as you can. Continuing to be kind to yourself through this process, and then ultimately knowing when to ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength of when you're able to reach out for that help. And so we're here to talk a little bit about what some of those options are. So, like I said, we've been talking about mental health, but I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that this is impacting, ultimately this has a really big impact on your mental health, but there might be other factors that are causing that impact. So some of those things might be your finances, your academics, your health, and various other areas. So within finances, you might have a changing income. We talked about the career. We'll be talking later on as part of this series. So they'll talk about some different options and things in regards to that career aspect, but being aware that your financial situation might have changed. There's rent payments still due, food still needs to be on the table, tuition bills are still coming in. So understanding that that can have a huge impact on how you're doing right now. The academics, your grades may not have turned out as expected. The situations have changed. You may be trying to figure out what that SU grade option ended up meaning for your long-term impact, and planning those classes for the next coming semesters as we still continue to figure out that on-campus versus online component. Knowing that your health is still a very real thing, mental and physical. And so within physical health, how do you address concerns? How do you get those medications that you need? And then also, like was already been talked about, having some victim resource options as well, and some general wellness tips and the mental health component that we just talked about. So one thing to know is, even though the world is operating a little bit differently right now, there are still a number of resources that are available, and a number of them have already been talked about, but here are some additional ones. Some of them are being repeated a little bit again. I'm just going to use them in different formats, but UCF, while we're operating remotely, is having a lot of resources that are also operating remotely. It's an interesting world that we live in, and with technology the way it is right now, there are a number of formats that are being used to be able to provide that resource and support in the same, with similar functions. It may not be the exact same, but doing what we can. So some resources that still are providing content are wellness and health promotion services, student health services, Student Academic Resource Center, Nights Helping, Nights Pantry, victim services, the Rec and Wellness Center, and some others. So what that looks like is WIPS is putting out some wellness content regularly. The health center is also putting out content. They have delivery and pickup services available through their pharmacy. They're doing telehealth appointments as well. The Academic Resource Center is still continuing to offer some of their services in a remote setting. The pantry is doing some drive-up options for being able to still have access to those pantry resources. Victim Services is still operational and creating content too. Rec and Wellness Center is putting out workout videos and group classes that are online, and a number of different things. Also, to know that there are different financial resources out there as well. You may have recently received some information about the CARES Act, so know that that's out there too. And there is a resource called 211 that is operated locally, and there are national resources as well. So know that those services are available. Sometimes they're by appointment. Some of them are video content or social media posts that are able to interact with at your own time span. And so I just highly suggest being able to kind of reach out and see what is available and figuring out what works for you. And remembering that even when sometimes it seems like it's overwhelming, that you do often have different options available to you. All right, so accessing the resources. Like I mentioned, social media is an interesting thing right now, but it's something that we're heavily relying on. So many offices are posting resources and updates and links to the resources that they have on those social media sites. So I encourage you to explore them. If there's an office that you think you might want to get connected with, this is a great opportunity to see what they're offering and see a little bit about what they're doing there as well. Check with office websites. Many of them have specific COVID-related websites and updates on what's happening during this time. So check those out, see what's available. There might be new opportunities that you hadn't been aware of before. The university also has a specific dedicated website for this. They also have a frequently asked questions page, which I feel like is very helpful. So if you have something that you aren't sure, you really want to talk to someone, but you want to just look up some information, that's a great place to be able to go. And start looking through because they may have your answer right there for you. And then the other thing too is remembering that while we're doing this remote work, offices are receiving a bunch of requests and we are happy to help you along the way. Bear with us as we continue to adjust as well. And we'll get back to you as quickly as we can and continue to reach out for that help and assistance moving forward. So like I mentioned, I'm with Student Care Services and with UCF Cares. So know that we are also here for you. Student Care Services does meet with students. We are doing virtual appointments currently. And so our contact information is on there. It's also on our Student Care Services website, but you can feel free to reach out when we talk about resource and support options for students individually. And then UCF Cares is also operational. So we are the outreach arm of the organization. And so we're creating content that's up on social media. We're still trying to engage in with students. And so we have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page, which is at UCF Cares. And we also are doing live videos currently on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So feel free to chime in. And really trying to promote those resource options, but also taking moments to find those things that bring you joy throughout that. So on Thursdays, oftentimes our lives is a quick DIY fun project because through all this, there's a lot to cope with as we've been talking about, but there is a lot of opportunity to continue to find out what works for you, find that assistance that you need and continue planning forward to be able to address concerns that you have now, but also plan for the future ahead and find what will help you in the long run.
So we had reached the ending of our presentation. This is a brief survey. If you could please fill out the survey and let us know how we can improve or what we did great on. We're always looking for ways to improve on our presentations. In the meantime, we will gladly take any questions that you might have. You can put them in the chat, then we can answer them for you. We also have a Q&A session coming up on I believe it's the 11th at 1 o'clock, and we can also answer questions then too. So if you don't have any question now and you come up with any question later, you can always sign up for that session and then we can help you answer those questions. Okay.
So we did have a question come through.
Okay.
Student wanted to know, are the resources offered through CAPS available to graduates as an alumni?
Yes, currently we do. We have a Bridges program. If you are senior, if you're a senior and you just graduated and you want to continue services, we can do those services over the summer. You can just give us a call and we can provide you more information about that.
What about for those who have been alumni for a while? Let's say 2 to 3 semesters.
I don't, currently we are not providing those services.
I do want to say that you could still reach out to us, even if you've been an alumni for a little bit. Don't hesitate to reach out to us because we still will do our best to help you get connected with someone that can provide services. The majority of providers of mental health are providing telehealth sessions right now. There are some that are providing in person. You would have to decide if you wanted to take that risk. Likely we would be able to connect you with a telehealth provider that can transition into in-person once things are back to some form of normal.
All right, I'm just making sure that answered the student's question. Do you mind going back to the slide that showed all the resources? All right, I think we might be good with questions for right now.
All right, well, thank you everyone for participating. If you have other question that comes up throughout the week, so please join us on our next session. And Career Services will be presenting this Thursday at 1 o'clock as well. So if you like, you can sign up and join them for their presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everybody. Sorry. And just wanted to say, just remember to take care of yourself through this process and reach out if you have questions or looking for additional assistance. We're always happy to help how we can.